Going through changes, come from different faces.
Hello and welcome to this Struggles to Success podcast with Dr. Emmanuel, the podcast which helps you use struggles to become better, stronger, and more successful. I keep on saying struggles are gifts, and instead of just getting through our struggles, we can actually grow through them, and that's what great people and teams do. I am Dr. Emmanuel. I am the host of this podcast, and you're all very welcome. On this podcast, we aim to share stories and lessons on turning struggles into success. A wise person learns from their own mistakes, and even wiser person learns from others' mistakes, and that's the ethos of this podcast. This is our third podcast. And in this episode, we are joined by Mr. Ngu Morcho, Pa Morcho, and I have the honor and pleasure to host him for this podcast. More than a friend, we went to school together, secondary school in Sacred Heart College, Cameroon, and since then we have been in contact and working together, communicating together as we do as brothers and friends. And it's a delight and an honor to welcome him to this podcast. And I'm going to introduce him, and it can take us an hour if I were to just talk about him and introduce him. But I'm going to try to be brief and maybe introduce him by just talking through his journey. He's based in the US now. We went to secondary school together, Sacred Heart College in Cameroon. And after that, he left and went to the US, to UK first, and then to the US for university. Studied physics, and then also had an MBA in Houston, in Texas. After that, he worked. He was in the Army. He joined the
Navy.
Navy. The US military, Navy branch, was there for 4 years. And then subsequently, after that, joined Pfizer, where he was a primary care and later senior hospital account manager. After that, he joined Alpha Dev LLC, and that's an early life science technology development company. And then subsequently from that, also became founder and managing director at SciTech Solutions, an industrial project finance and development advisory company. From there, he then moved on to become general manager and project development leader in GE Healthcare for West and Central Africa, a really big shift. And then subsequently, founder and chair of the board of Yako Medical Africa Ltd, a healthcare technology solutions platform and social enterprise operating through an integrated care ecosystem. And then more recently, a public charity and non-profit organization with a mission to develop impactful solutions for corneal disease and blindness, improving affordable and accessible care for people with corneal disease and also blindness. So you can see that you can see the development and what he's gone through to where he is now, really an accomplished social entrepreneur building healthcare ecosystems in the US, with experience in the US, but also experience in Africa and other parts of the world. So it's really a pleasure to welcome you, Pa Morcho.
Well, Emma, I'll just call you Emma, Dr. Emmanuel. Thank you so much. I have been, I don't get excited about a lot of things, but as we said in school, I was up doing pandang, as we used to call it, studying late into the night to make sure that I did a good job in the podcast, because I know your standards are very high. one of the blessings of our lives is the brotherhood, the fraternity that we built as 9-10-year-old boys that has got us to where we are today. Intentionally or unintentionally, we set very high standards for each other from the very beginning. And when I see what you do, I always say to folks, my claim to fame is I always refer to my classmates as a proxy to how brilliant I am. And I say, look, if these guys can be this good, and I was sitting next to them, I must be halfway decent. So I'm honored and privileged to be having this conversation with you.
Thank you, Pa Ngu Morcho. And in the advert for the podcast episode, I mentioned that you have a natural gift of being a storyteller, and we still smile when we remember all of the stories you used to tell us in secondary school, and you have that gift. It's a natural gift, and you're talented, and I'm sure people listening today are going to benefit from that and also learn that skill. So with that, I want to ask you the first really question. And struggles, as I said when I started the podcast, are gifts. And if you have a conversation, as we're having with any successful person, you would find that they used a struggle and probably learned more from a struggle than from their successes. And so the first question to you is, what's your opinion about that? What's your thoughts about struggles, and what impact has that had on your career, on your life?
Well, it's a very interesting premise, right? And especially when I saw when you wrote the book, we'd all gone through COVID and everything else. We were in the midst of a global new normal, and you're right. I would just want to first of all thank you for reminding me about my gift of storytelling. As a kid, you don't know that it's a gift, but I've always had a knack for. I always love narrating complex structures. I've always had a really, really wild imagination. In the US, I learned that I'm what's called a super creative, right? Folks who can imagine things that don't exist and explain it as if it's real. And that's a talent that visionaries have. When you grow up in a nice environment, you put that together with other structures, you can kind of create tomorrow, right? You can imagine things, and really brilliant scientists have that, and really brilliant artists. But we don't know that when we're kids, that we have this natural proclivity. Stories and struggles becoming your strength is something we all grew up with without realizing. Right? I can go through my father's journey, being born in the village and having a car accident, getting kicked out of school, because even though he was brilliant, he was a little indisciplined. He was a top student, but he got kicked out of school very early. So all his classmates went to Sase, which was the counterpart school. And he got pulled out of school because his older brother had to get married for dowry. And he ended up being a janitor at the US consulate, starting as a janitor. Now, most people would think this guy who's a top A student and his classmates are all in school has dropped out of school, and he gets a job as a janitor. But that gave him the entryway to learn how to work, and he became an senior administrative consultant with the U.S. Embassy after 38 years. So what became, if you wanted to call it a diversion, a seeming failure, was a blessing in disguise. And that's become the theme in a lot of our lives, right? I have seen this, and I'm now 50 years old, manifesting it in every day of my life by things that which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the biggest thing that I've seen is that, and you do a lot of meditation, self-reflection. During COVID, we had a lot of time to think. And I started, really analyzing my life, going through every single step, and how did we get here? Why are we here? Why did God allow some of us to survive, to make it to the US, to make it to the UK? We're just very, very fortunate. It's not like you and I had the brightest Cameroonians ever. We know men and women that are much brighter than us, but they just were born in different homes and they were less fortunate. And you look at it and you see that everything is within the premise of your life. My name, Ngo, I decided to find meaning in it. Ngo has a meaning in my village, being, firstborn male and usually being born of twins. But I started looking at the acronym itself, NGU, and I decided Ngo means never give up.
Right.
So I decided to embody that which is in my name, that things you go through, as I tell my three boys, and we do the ABCs, right? Adversity builds character.
Right.
Whatever puts you through an adverse situation builds your character, prepares you for the next phase. So your book, your struggles, from struggles to success, is really a playbook for how to take your adversity and build your character and move on to the next level of success. I've seen that through my life, and I've got some examples to share with you that I kind of prepared, but it's spot on.
That's right. Really, the ABC, as you said, adversity builds character. It's really powerful. And I really take home as well what you said about sometimes the struggles you have is the path that leads you to better things.
Yes.
I think maybe today is a really poignant day to say that with what happened to Ngannou and,
yes.
and losing inverted commas the match with Tyson Fury.
Mm-hmm.
We never know. In a few years from now, we may be smiling and saying, actually, it led him to better things, and that was the story of his life.
Think about it. He lost, seemingly, right? Lost his fire, so he left Cameroon, right? And he missed opportunities, and then he moved all the way through. He got to the US and lost his way through into the MMA. And he left MMA losing his way into a heavyweight fight, right? And now he's lost the fight, seemingly, and he's going to move to something else. So we lose our ways into success, right? And I think that's what it is. It's every failure is a set of lessons that prepares you for the next set of opportunities.
Right. It's really so. How do you get in that? How do you get in that mindset? Because often people will see adversity or failure not with the mindset we've just gone through, and we've just been talking about. They'll see it as the world is coming to an end. Mm-hmm. Why do I deserve this? And I just give up.
Well, see, Emmanuel, as you said in your book, right? And I really love how you put your book together. But life is one string of mini apprentices, right? Something happens, as you say, and then you stop and you think and you have clarity and your 5 steps. And then you say, well, look, I've got to do something to change this because this is no longer good. Right. And then you put together either yourself, your wife, your family, your best friend to say, I need help to change this. I need you to help me because I want to do this and I need help. And then you have a plan and then you execute on it. That what you did, your 5 step, is really the way life works. And I'll start with a couple of examples, one which you're very familiar. On the 28th of March, 1989, if you remember, when we were in Lower 6, I had a car accident. It was second spring, what they call spring holiday or Easter holiday, and I was coming back. We had a car accident on the road in Bafoussam from Douala to Bamenda, and I had at the time what I now recognize as a traumatic brain injury because I lost my index finger and really lost consciousness for I think over 7 or 10 days because I was heavily sedated. Now, if you and I went through that in the US, UK, or in Abu Dhabi, where you are, that would be a major medical emergency. There would be CT scans, there would be procedures to make sure that there's no issues and no internal bleeding, but none of that was done. Actually, 4 or 5 years later, my second year university, and on the campus of Kiel University, I was itching, and I went like this, and a piece of glass from the windshield came out of my head. So it was stitched, but even the procedure was not efficient. Now, here's what happened, which and this is the first time I'm telling this in a public setting. If you when we're all in school, we're all fairly decent students. Mm-hmm. When I came back, I couldn't write with my right hand because I was injured. And then Joe and a couple of folks were taking my notes for me. But I started transposing things, started looking, it's almost like you develop mild dyslexia, like a simple equation And this very famous equation, because that's what cost me an A grade in math, force equals to mass times acceleration. And you remember those questions, you would have to prove acceleration equals 1 in the exam. But during the exam, I wrote the equation as force equals to mass over acceleration. Because I would have these momentary losses of consciousness. And it carried it away through the college. Even in university, and John Samkuba Musa, one of our classmates who I went to Keele University with, would tell you for a couple of years, I was in a very dark place. I didn't go to class. I didn't understand what's happening. I would have just blackouts. I didn't know anything that was going on with me. But that accident, and for at least decent enough medical care that I was saved, but still, I didn't have rehab. I didn't understand what I had gone through. It affected my faculties for a long time. And it took my sense of self from here all the way down. I felt very insecure. I became very dark. And when I came to the US, when I barely graduated university, I came to the US and say, I'm no longer the guy I know I am. I'm not performing at the level I know I can perform. I need a place to go reset. That's why I joined the Navy. I needed to literally go start all over. So I took 4 years, enlisted in the Navy, which is usually an opportunity for folks who get out of high school, not with a college degree. But I enlisted in the Navy to restart myself because I knew in the US, if I didn't have another set of experiences, my college degree in the UK didn't mean anything. So I literally restarted my life in the US with my 4 years of Navy experience. That's what I used to get a job at Pfizer. It's not the college degree, but it's because I had clarity that I needed to make a life for myself. Because for the first 2 years in the US, I wasn't going anywhere. I needed to change where I was living. I was crashing on my cousin's couch in Boston with a college degree in physics and no sense of direction. I needed folks to help me figure out where I was going, and nobody was there to help. So I went to the Navy recruiting office, and they were my team I could collaborate with. And I needed a plan of action. So I wanted to go be a hospital corpsman, because you and I know we all wanted to be medical doctors or engineers. So I enrolled in the Navy in the medical corpsman program because I wanted the Navy to pay for me to go to medical school. But then I get to the Navy and the medical corpsman program is full. I got diverted to electrical. So I became an electrician's mate, electrical technician. That's another pivot. Just like when you went to your first hospital in the UAE, you found out you were the only doctor. You had to create a whole department. I had to figure it out. I had to become an electrician and electrical guy. But that was 4 years in the Navy, after which I regained confidence in myself, restored sense of self, and I could apply for a job in industry when Pfizer had just started launching these new products, Viagra, Zithromax, and Trovan. And I got a career in sales and marketing in healthcare. Back circular, you see. So that period from university to the US and in kind of being lost and then figuring out, taking this adversity of barely graduating college, being in a dark place, suffering from traumatic brain injury, which still till today, I haven't really figured out what really happened to me. And then coming into a new society at the age of 20, not having any roadmap. Everybody else was working in nursing homes, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be a professional, and I didn't have a mentor. So I had to go through the Navy, reset my life through that. And that's how I got a job at Pfizer. And thankfully, at Pfizer, I got to meet my wife, Michelle, who we've been married now 22 years. But that's my first pivot. That's my first struggle to, struggle to success, if you will. And there's many stories before that, but that was one of the first ones I wanted to share with you.
Really useful, thank you. Really, and I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from that. And from that story, what gave you the drive, the commitment to keep going, and for example, to pivot and join the Navy? Because as I mentioned before, some people will just freeze. You had clarity in terms of what you wanted to do, or you had clarity that where you were was not
where I wanted to be.
Where you wanted to be, and you needed to change that.
Do something.
Yes. So that drive to bring about that change, commitment. Mm-hmm. What do you think was the driving force behind that?
Look, peer pressure can be very good if it's the right kind of peer pressure, right? The family I came from, the standards my late father set, always rings in my head. But the second thing is you guys, you, Henry, Joe, all of us, the expectations we set for ourselves. There's a certain standard we expect of each other, and it's good peer pressure, right? Because I look around and I say, and that's why the people your children hang around with, the community you put around your family is important. And I would look around. When I came to the US, everybody in Boston, I landed in Logan Airport, 4th of July, 1993. And majority of the Cameroonian community at the time were people that we grew up with, highly educated, that they decided to just take menial jobs. People were driving cabs just to make ends meet. I immediately knew that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. I used to walk to MIT and walk to Harvard and ask for admissions papers. And I said, well, I would much rather do a second bachelor's degree than to go do a menial job, because my expectation that I had set for myself and that I knew my classmates and my brothers have set for me is that we were supposed to be the very best, or at least try to be the best amongst ourselves. So I said, well, interestingly enough, this coincided with an article on Fortune magazine I was reading when I was on my cousin's couch. And it said about over 75% of Fortune 500 CEOs or senior executives were ex-military. That line, I don't know why it stood out to me, but it jumped out at me. And I said, well, if I'm not in the military, I can never be an executive. So at least this I can control, right? It's one thing I don't have. My physics degree wasn't getting me anywhere because it was just a basic degree from the UK. So I said, if I go join the military, maybe I can go through the Naval Postgraduate Program. Maybe the Navy can pay for me to go to school, because we're trained to be academics first, right? And then figure out how to make a career, fortunately or unfortunately. So that's what pushed me in, is the expectations of my family, expectations I set for myself, and expectations set by my peers. We have a reputation to uphold. We're expected as Michets, as young men who grew up went to Sacred Heart, to be the very best. So you try to always do things that will make you try to be exceptional in what you do, and you try to belong to a team of people who are performing in an exceptional capacity. That was the push.
It's really helpful. So the setting expectations, people around you, where you also come from in terms of your upbringing, and say thanks to your parents and the expectations set for you, and your family. Mm-hmm. You're quite a driven person, if you don't mind me saying. Quite very, very, very focused. And as you talk about clarity, you can see that you're not just talking about it, you're seeing it.
Yeah.
You're actually seeing it. And look, not many people can have that focus where they see where they want to go. They may have some vague idea, but that having that clarity is also sometimes very difficult for people to get. They get confused with there are too many things going on, there are too many problems. So how do you get that clarity?
So Emmanuel, I'll tell you this. As a spiritual person, growing up, in the church and also being around folks, you learn to that everything that happens to you is a gift. Is how you choose to react to it. The second thing I wanted to tell you, the second story, was my father's passing, and on April 11th, 2004. I mean, it was a blow, even though he had cancer and we knew he was going to go. But when you grow up with such a big figure as a father, his passing is never easy. But as soon as he passed, something happened, right? I went to the village to bury him with the family, and I saw everybody looking to me. Like we used to look to him and say, what do we do? I'm like, I don't have a clue. What do you mean, what do we do? I literally walked around the house and looked at his grave. I'm like, Pa, you need to come and help. But he wasn't there. So I had to immediately, I knew I had to do something. Clarity, right? These people need me and I don't have a backup. Second, my time. That's the first time I realized I was mortal. There was a second gift that my father's passing him. I was like, I know my time. I'm on a clock. I'm going to be in this box at some point. So get on with it. That's the urgency, right? The third thing I knew was because he had prostate cancer and he had 63 years old and he died from a condition that I knew because I had been in pharmaceutical sales at that time for about 4 or 5 years, I knew was something that was very easily preventable, managed, and treatable. But because of the way he grew up, he never took medical advice. I immediately knew what my mission was. I immediately knew I was going to spend the rest of my life trying to help other people's fathers keep them from dying early. So I knew I had to be the head of the family, and I needed to start living beyond myself. Right? I knew I needed to get on with it. I knew I needed to do something in healthcare bigger than just promoting products for Pfizer. I needed to create a system that would allow people like my father, who grew up in Cameroon, to take advice from doctors such that they can prevent cancer from getting advanced and die. Because his issue was not cancer. His issue was not taking advice from doctors for years until the cancer grew to a point where we couldn't do anything about it. As you see these blocks, right? Then the next thing was I knew I didn't know anything about business. So we buried Pa, and so Pa died in April. This is another thing that you and we talk about, right? Pa died in April. We buried him in May. Get back to Houston in June, I enrolled in business school. I had never thought about business school until when Pa died. I enrolled in business school at Rice University. My goal, I walked in, I told the lady in admissions, I need to learn how to read a balance sheet because I have to go build one hospital in Africa because I need to save somebody's father from dying. That was my essay. It was barely a paragraph. And I got admitted to Rice University because my purpose was so clear. What I wanted to do was very clear. And the plan I needed was an MBA and an understanding of business to go execute on that. And that's what moved me from my career with Pfizer to halfway through business school, joining an early stage venture fund to learn how to raise money, to learn how to develop medical products, to a point where eventually get a career with GE, going to a Nigerian, working for GE in Africa. All along, my purpose was I need to do something so people like my father cannot die early. That was my drive. But it's from an event, right? It's from like the young lady who passed from sepsis, who literally went into the hospital for an operation to prepare her for twins. But then, like you said in your book, she developed sepsis in the hospital. That unintended consequence of that event triggered something that led to a whole new purpose in my life. So I've lived my life since my father died with a singular focus of developing care ecosystems for people who suffer from who are high risk of non-communicable diseases. So cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, COPD, conditions that slowly creep up on you, and next thing you know, it's too late. But because we Africans and people in underserved communities are reactive to care, right? If somebody has an accident, they'll go to the hospital. If somebody has a fever, they'll do something. But high blood pressure, you don't do anything about it until it's too late, and then you have to be on dialysis, or it's too late, and then there's a whole nother multi-organ failure. That discussion is not happening within the African community. It's not happening within our underserved community. And that's where I've spent the last, since 2004. Everything you've seen me do. I mean, I had a period where I spent 2 years with Carolink and I was fortunate enough to be gifted. That's another scenario. There's a whole nother story around that, right? To have the fortune to be selected to be the CEO of a nonprofit that fights corneal blindness. It taught me how nonprofits work. It taught me how a nonprofit that's resetting is going. And it also taught me board dynamics. And it also taught me a lot of lessons, because there I had clarity, I had urgency of change, but I didn't have time to build a team. And so there was a disconnect. But you have to learn these lessons in the order, just like you put in your 5 steps. Because if the order is not, if you don't follow that order properly, you will never get to the plan or the execution phase, which is really the most important. So,
right. Really deep what you've just said, and I was listening very, very attentively, and there is so much in what you've just said, and different people get different things from what you've just said. What came to me, and what really struck me was first, and may Pa's soul rest in peace, and I'm sure he's smiling as he is listening to us speak.
Yes, he's around.
He's around. I'm sure he's smiling with and gleaming with pride. First, when Pa passed, the realization that you had quite quickly that there was a problem, there was a struggle, and nobody else was going to help get you out of this. You had to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And that is also something that people struggle with when they're faced with a struggle, that they may blame everybody else and stand still. But you owning and say, I need to do something different, is the first thing that came to me. The second was the urgency, and that there isn't much time, where you haven't got much time in this world. So you shouldn't spend too much time just holding a problem,
wallowing in pity,
and start finding solutions. And not talking too much about it, too long about it. And then the third was it gave you found your purpose. You found your purpose through that struggle. And that's why it goes back to what I was saying about problems are gifts. If you can use the situation and use problems and learn that skill, you may actually find your purpose at the end. And so that's really, really profound what you said.
No, Emmanuel, I'll tell you, look, I started, we went to Sacred Heart, and everybody who knows anything about us, most guys who graduate from Sacred Heart either become engineers or doctors, right? Because we had a predominantly science high school for a while. Nowadays, there's more plurality and more opportunity, but you're either an engineer or a doctor or something in between, or a researcher, right? So I've always straddled this thing of technology and medicine, but I never ever saw myself as a practitioner, right? I did see that I was squeamish around children dying. I was squeamish when we did labs. It wasn't a big thing for me, but I liked explaining it. So I knew I was always going to be a conveyor of the elegance of technology and its utility in humanity, right? How technology can be used to improve lives. I knew I was always going to be the guy communicating, taking these things, explaining it to folks and helping them use it. So where I end up as a sales guy in business development is where I belong. But how I got there, I never knew, right? But Pa's demise, and when I was 31 years old when Pa died, and I keep saying to everybody, the most important day of my life was when my father died. It's not when I had my first son, because so it was 9 months old. It's not when I got married, because Michelle and I married in 2001. But when Pa died, I stopped waiting. I stopped, in a very traditional African thing, your father has a super ego, a super personality, especially when you grow up with the fathers like some of us were fortunate to. You almost defer, right? And so you become a late bloomer, right? But Pa's passing allowed me to, okay, I'm up next. So now my brothers and sisters, my family, and in my own way, because you cannot lead the family the way Pa did. In my own way, I show my leadership through service to others, because Pa's thesis, our ethos as a family, is to serve others, to make society better. That's what he did. So me kind of going in the family business of trying to improve society, create a better opportunity for others, felt natural. It was a natural fit. Going into healthcare, but using technology and business, it was a natural fit. Doing it in Africa, or doing it in an area that focused in Africa, was also a natural fit. So all these things, as passing, created a blueprint for me to just write the next phase of my life. I tell people, I have never worked a day in my life since my father died. I have been employed, but I've never worked, because I would do it even if you don't pay me. This is what I'll do for the rest of my life. If I won the lottery tomorrow, my wife will tell you, I will wake up and figure out how to reduce maternal infant mortality rates in Nigeria and across Africa, how to do early stage screening so that we can reduce men's risk of prostate cancer. You've known my work I did at Yako, with folks who are high risk, hypertensive, all the ECG scans we've done, and the incidence of stroke and ST elevated MI, heart attacks, how we can get them to cardiologists, interventional cardiologists in a timely manner, how we can build systems around that, how we can build systems around kids with avoidable corneal blindness. These are all pieces of the bigger pie, the ecosystem of coordinated care we don't have. Care is very disjointed, very fragmented, right? And so I am on an eternal crusade to create integrated care ecosystems for conditions that need handoff to be efficient, right? It needs the right handoff. If the emergency system is not good, by the time a patient gets to your emergency room, if the ambulance is not properly done, by the time they get to your emergency room, you as your team have to do everything all over. You have to do all the tests, and that you may not have enough time. So if the diagnosis is not good enough, if the patient education is not decent, and the referral on the medical files and records are not comprehensive, by the time they get to the specialist, the patient may be too late. So if we don't do the work in the beginning, everybody worries about how many doctors we don't have and how many nurses we don't have. And yes, we have a major shortage in human capital in the health workforce. But the prep, the preface, right? Like you said in your book, if you skip clarity, everything else in the end falls apart, right? If you get the wrong diagnosis in the beginning, you're treating somebody for something they don't suffer from. Like your story about your plumbing stuff. If you screen me for, as you know, in Cameroon and in Africa, we do that a lot. You have a stomach ache, something's wrong, and they're treating you for something very different because there was no imaging test done, no pathology. So for me, we have to not just be part of the entire ecosystem. You have to build an ecosystem where folks with the right capability do the early education, do the right diagnosis, hand off or refer to the right specialist for treatment, and along the way, use technology. Today, we have the benefit of AI and blockchain and tokenomics, which is something you can use where the doctor can be compensated, the community health worker can be compensated, the primary care doctor, the diagnostician can all be compensated along that value chain, right? And we can use technology to leapfrog the gaps in our infrastructure. We don't have to go build 10,000 beds of hospitals. We can use AI and blockchain and develop digital tokens and digital currency that can reward people in disparate parts of the continent so that they can do healthcare at scale. We can use tokenomics to do credentialing. So you can know that if the midwife in the village in Bansot says she's a midwife, you and I know that her credentials have been verified and locked using blockchain so nobody can tamper with her record. So we know she's legit. We don't have to wait to build for ministries and politicians to build Taj Mahals where you and I, you are in Abu Dhabi. But you can, using technology, create a comprehensive infectious disease and sepsis program in Cameroon from where you are. My job is to use the technology to create the environment for you to do that. That's what I love to do.
Wow. So I started off by saying struggles are gifts, and I didn't define a struggle. You have just defined the struggle, and it's something that makes your heart sink, something that makes you feel you can't overcome. And you just described what happened and what you felt when Pa passed away. May his soul rest in peace. And then turning a struggle into success is radically turning that round and learning from it and growing through the experience. And that's exactly what you did in learning the potential benefits, as you described it, of learning how to solve problems and complex problems, as you're doing now within the healthcare, the health system, and being a social and entrepreneur, learning how to innovate and all the ideas which you're talking about now, and then also management and leadership skills, because You now have developed the skills for yourself in your CV, being a CEO, a president of Kera Link, founder and chairman of the board of Yako Medical, and then finding your mission, your purpose. And it's pretty clear just listening to you and watching you how focused you are. And you said this is something you would do. You're not.
It's not a job.
It's not a job. It's not a job. You would do it whatever.
Yeah.
So much clarity about this is your purpose, and you want to save as many lives as possible, and not from healthcare, but early on, and leave a legacy for Pa. And this is a beautiful description of the skill of turning a struggle into success. And I'm sure a lot of people have learned from this, and it also inspires a lot of people who are maybe in a similar position where you were before to actually do something about it and use it in their favor. And that's what you've done. So it's really, really inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. It's to anybody who may feel at any time that they're in a dark place, right? Or if you feel like your ranking in class is not where it ought to be. I've been there. If you feel like you're not getting picked for the right job, I've been there. And if you feel like you are getting fired from a job, justly or unjustly, I've been there. If you've raised money or tried to raise money to start a company, and then COVID hits and you have to shut the company down, and you have investors, you've raised over $1 million, and you spend 8 years of your life, and it looks like everything is a dead end. I've been there, right? If you've had to leave your family in the U.S. and go work in Africa for 8 years because you're you have little boys who are all under 10, and you see them barely half the year because you have a mission that's bigger than you. I've been there. And all of that is part of the knitting of what is my life, right? It makes for my own unique blanket. And everybody's blanket is different and unique, and it's by design. The only thing that I have learned through this is I wish I knew how to be more authentic earlier, right? And I also wish I had discovered the power of gratitude. Because everything you're talking about, your entire book is a thesis on the power of gratitude, of having a gratitude mindset, which is what I do now religiously, the growth mindset, as others would call it. And every morning I get up and I say 10 things that I'm eternally grateful for that day. And that starts my day. Every single thing I see in my life, I am grateful for. Every single thing. I thank God for every experience. I thank God for every opportunity. I thank God for for everything that goes one way or another. I know there's a lesson in it. Because as long as I wake up, and as long as I decide to be grateful for all the experiences, I have a chance to improve somebody else's life through my interactions with them, right? And to me, I believe that those 3 words in the Bible, that God is love. To me, if I have love in my heart and I interact with somebody, they will feel God in that interaction. And so all I do, the stuff we do, I try every day, and I fail a lot of times, but I try every day to try to put that very simple equation in front of me, right? If I love what I'm doing, if I'm pure about my approach, and you feel it, and if you're also pure, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it. Now, if you're not pure, you're going to read my intentions as untoward. You're going to see what I'm doing and think I'm onto something else. I can't control that. And I've had a lot of situations like that. Why is Ngu doing this? Why is he going to Cameroon all the time? Why is he doing this in Nigeria? Like with some past experiences, why is he, one of my bosses used to call me Le Cheval Fou, right? The wild horse. He was like, well, this guy is all over the place. He didn't understand that I was in a rush to build this ecosystem. Well, he said, this was a GE. Just go sell equipment. Why are you trying to do too much? Oh, he doesn't understand operations because he has all these big ideas. I could see so far ahead, and I was frustrated because they weren't moving fast enough. Now, I also needed to have a little bit better temperament to figure out they weren't the right team for the mission I was on. Sometimes you also have to realize.
That, yeah.
Yeah, like I said to my son the other day, if you're a cheetah and you're on a race with elephants and the elephants beat you, it's not because you're slow, it's because you're running with the wrong group. So if you're a cheetah and you want to know how fast you are, go run with cheetahs. Sometimes you could be a cheetah running with elephants, and you're going at their pace because you think you got to keep pace, but you're completely underplaying your gifts.
Absolutely. No disrespect to elephants.
No, just elephants are great at what they do, but you're not an elephant and they're not cheetahs.
Yeah, it's
so
different.
We also, that's the other thing about clarity, learn how to remove yourself from certain groups where you don't belong. And this is another piece of clarity, is a gift I want to share. Recognize your tribe. Recognize the tribe you belong to, right? Some people will never get how I think or why I think the way I do. And I love them for that. But you're not supposed to, because you don't have the benefit and the perspective of my struggles. You don't have the context of the journey I've been on. And you don't have the weight of the obligation I have for my people and for community. And you don't have the sense of urgency I have and the capacity that I've built to do 20 things at once, where you think, because you see me, maybe because of how my skin looks or something, that I'm only supposed to do one thing at a time. You don't know how I was raised in Sacred Heart. You don't know how I've struggled to overcome stuff. I can do 20 things and you can do one. But if you see me doing 20 things as being distracted, I'm sorry. I'm in the wrong class, right? So that's the thing.
It's really, really useful. And you've demonstrated also a skill, which I really admire, of being flexible and being able to pivot throughout the journey you've described and your career and just the stories you've told. What I've been seeing is how you pivot.
Mm-hmm.
There's a problem. You don't just keep banging your head against the wall, so to speak. You pivot from where you started off with physics, joined the Navy, MBA, then joined a pharmaceutical company, and then social enterprise, and then now building ecosystems. You're pivoting all the time. With the objective, the clarity of where you want to go still there.
Yeah.
And it's not a straight line.
You and I have been in enough flights, right? We've been on enough planes. And every now and then the pilot will say, sorry, we have to go higher up altitude because there's clouds, or we got to fly lower, or we got to take a diversion. It doesn't change where they're going to go, right? Right now, I started Yako, this company, which I started when I left GE because I was in this burning desire. I resigned GE 2016 to start Yako so I can continue this journey. And Yako started as a medical equipment leasing company. But we knew very quickly when COVID happened, we had to pivot. So today, what are we doing? We're relaunching Yako as a digital health ecosystem. So we're using digital technology and Web 3.0 tech. I have learned over the last year, Emmanuel, I've been in school learning about AI in healthcare, blockchain in healthcare. Why? Because those are the tools that will connect you to Henry, to everybody else, and allow you to sit where you're sitting and still be able to deliver your capacity and deliver your insight and know-how to a nurse and doctors in Cameroon or in Sudan or in Ethiopia or in Colombia. So creating the infrastructure for that ecosystem to continue to exist so people can go have affordable access to quality care continues. But the new skill I'm learning is the digital health. So you have to you have to be a perpetual learner. You have to be ready to learn a new skill as long as the mission is the same and the problem you have to solve changes. You have to learn the skill for that problem because you're going somewhere, right? And your destiny has to be so big that you can never really arrive, right? If I wanted to save 100 lives, I would have retired. Because I can guarantee you, what I've done has touched over 12,000 lives at least. And that's direct numbers I can count, not to talk of the knock-on effect of the lives of people I employed and how they sent their kids to school and everything else. So in my little time as a young boy from the village, from Bavachu, who grew up with privilege, I can close my eyes today and say I've overachieved. But it's nowhere near where we need to be, right? The mission is to make sure people can live life to the fullest if everything else is the same. So the things we can avoid, if I can tell a mother in the village, Mama, if you reduce your salt, if you reduce your sugar, if you use natural sugar instead of processed sugar, your life will be better. If you drink water more than drinking your beer, and if you eat more fresh vegetables, or if you walk a little more, right? If you just go get your breast exam done as you turn 40, men, if you just do an annual physical once a year to just see what's going on and do something about it, right? And if you can trust the doctor, and if the doctor can actually relate to fact, then if we do that, all the technology piece behind it is that's the sexy part. The real hard part is the communication and education and changing the health-seeking behavior. That journey that mission you can never fully accomplish. But I'm starting it, and hopefully we can build a mission and more people can join.
Thank you. What a way to bring the main part of the episode to conclusion. And to finish off, I have a tradition of asking our special guest to explain or raise one do or don't when faced with a struggle. And you may have already talked about some, I'm sure, as we've been having this conversation, but in brief, one do and one don't when faced with a struggle.
Okay. I will start with the don't, because I like to end with the do, right? Don't take it personal. It's not your fault. And you're not that special that it happened just to you. Don't take it personal. It's not about you. It would never was. First thing. And if anything else, don't take it personal. So be unemotional. Just, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Right? As one of my mentors used to say, don't anticipate and don't speculate. Just, it is. Now, what you have to do is you have to get on with it. You have to get on with it. Paralysis kills, right? If you analysis paralysis kills. If you just sit there and wallow in it, if you need to take a second to feel, to have a pity party for a second, if you need to cry, I do a lot of crying when things are tough, but I give myself permission. After that, it's okay, now let's get back to work. So first, don't take it personal. It's not about you. It never is. It's externality, and it's also a gift. Recognize it for what it is. It is a gift. You're now supposed to do something about it, right? You've been presented with a growth opportunity. So do something, because you have to grow, because that's your prayer. When a struggle shows up, it's God saying, okay, you were asking for this. Here, open it up, turn it into something beautiful. That's why you're alive. Turn it into something beautiful. Touch somebody's life with it.
Thank you. And what a way to come to the close of the podcast. I have learned so much, and I'm sure the listeners
Thank you,
learn
brother.
even more. You have taken us through the journey. You have shown us what a struggle is. You have shown us how you can use that skill of turning a struggle and radically turn a struggle into success. And by doing that, actually find your mission and your passion. And it's clear that you found yours. You've also left us with a really important lesson that time is short.
Yes.
And you have to get on with it and not ask for permission to solve problems, struggles when they exist. And then you've also taught us how to be flexible, how to pivot, and you don't have to convert a struggle into success in a straight line. You can go left, right, left,
Yep.
and learn along the way. When it changes, you have to be flexible.
Yep.
So important. And so with that, I want to thank you for joining me and accepting to be a guest on this podcast. And I'm going to ask all the people listening, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please follow the podcast, like it, and also share it with family and friends. You may change somebody's life. And this is what this podcast is about. And it's what the book From Struggles to Success is about. Please also leave a review if you like it. Give us feedback. We want to keep improving it. And even if you want to suggest other people we can invite as guests, please do so. And on that note, I want to thank you again, Pa Ngu Morcho, for joining. We will also in the text, we will in the text leave some details about how people can contact you and get in touch about Yako as well. And thanks to all the listeners. And we look forward to seeing you again at our next podcast very soon. Thank you. And stay blessed.
God bless you too. Thank you so much, my brother. Keep doing what you're doing. And we're all very, very, very proud of you. Very, very proud. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.